Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, everybody, to Mob Boss Bolshevism, episode 5 or 6. We're not completely sure. I'm Drem,
I'm Marxist Hoodlum, also known as Azrael.
I'm Islamic socialist.
and today we're going to continue our conversation on Israel and U.S. domestic and foreign uh, patterns and politics and what the policies are. The first item on the block that we're going to discuss is the Israeli defense minister and various other high ranking Israeli government officials having resigned from their posts this week, and what our thoughts are about it. The humanitarian pier breaking off and floating away some weeks ago, and the IOF's most recent hostage operation in which they killed 247 people to save only 4 hostages. Um, in any other circumstance, that would be considered a failure. But no, if you read mainstream news, you'd think that uh, Israel was the IOF just did a fucking bang up job. Um, but yeah, so the defense minister resigning from their posts, that's kind of like I don't know, man. I think they kind of see the writing on the wall. They saw the verdicts being handed down by the ICC, and they know, like, that's it, man. Like, we're in the shit, we're stirring the pot, and they're gunning for us. And the question is, like, how far will it? My question is, at least, how far will the ICC get in the prosecutions?
I
What do
mean,
you guys think?
the only way this is gonna happen is if the United States goes to war with Israel. At this point, the United States holds a very big uh hold on, just in general the world and imperialism in general, um topped out with the imperialism of Israel. It's it might be like you're saying, like they're looking at the writing on the wall and saying like, oh, we're gonna get like we're gonna get like jailed and all that stuff, but it to be honest is very unlikely, unless like people stand up in this country, both here in Israel, and beat the imperialist powers.
So I have a bit of a different take on this. I don't think it's more the worry about what the ICC might do, because let's be honest, the ICC can do quite a bit, but they need the force behind them. And like the biggest protector of Israel right now is the dominant superpower, which is the United States. I think it's
Mhm.
more they see how their own like domestic issues are starting to buckle. They're looking at it how their economy is suffering, not only just from a lack of trade and a lack of partners, but also just from the issues dumping all the money that they are into the cleansing of Gaza, and they're angering their own populace. Like when you start to see, it's such a rare sight because it almost never happens, but when you start to see Israelis burning the Israeli flag out in the streets, angry
Mhm.
and rioting, and even some trying to barge into Netanyahu's house, I think a lot of the political figures of the Zionist entity are starting to see less of a backlash of foreign entities and more a worry that their own country is going to devolve into a civil war.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I was gonna say I think they're kind of like they're definitely like the arrogant. I mean, they're all arrogant. They're the arrogant, like, petulant child who's, like, literally been handed everything. Their defense, they cannot survive without mommy and daddy US, and they're like, and because things aren't working, the way they expect them to, they are now they're kind of turning the fingers inward, and um trying to lay blame on, like, Netanyahu and their government. And it's like, look, a lot of this is it's like I understand for the people to react that way because yeah, they're not the ones in power, but like your entire nation is subsidized through by US tax dollars. You're going like it's not just your leaders who are the problem, which is another popular line that Democrats have been going with, is to just try to lay all these problems at the feet of Bibi Netanyahu, and when it's really the entire almost the entirety of the society is um, almost the entirety of the society is, with the exception of some Israeli communists who actually want peace, uh, and for the bombing to stop, that it's kind of pathological. It's ingrained in the society, in Israeli society. um like, yes, there are working people in uh in Israel and stuff who are like, who are suffering because of the poor decisions of their government, like they're, if we're talking strictly class analysis. um but at the same time, the undercurrent of all of that is, the scapegoating Palestinians for things they never did, and now they're trying to, now that things aren't, uh, people aren't believing their lies, and things aren't, um, uh, their arrogance is not producing the same results they kind of get. They're getting, if not iffy, they're getting restless, and again pointing the finger inward.
Yeah.
Have you all heard of the CPUSA invited the Communist Party of Israel? Um, I don't know what happened, like, but it was like a lot of Marxists were talking about it, and I mean it's kind of interesting to see if what they align to. So from what I read in the past, like the Marxist Leninists in Israel, are against the occupation of Palestine, but I believe they want a two-state resolution, which you know most of us, at least in this room, don't believe in that.
Yeah.
It is sadly not only a line that the Israeli Communist Party has, but a lot of communist parties. It's one of the it's I personally believe it's a backstep issue that quite a lot of the communists around the world are taking, but it really just it's something that is gonna need more. A decision can't really be made on the concept of national liberation from independent communist parties around the world. They can either show their support for the liberation, which is, the more proper political analysis, but we won't see liberation in Gaza until it's the people of Gaza who actually liberate it, or at least with the mass support of major superpower, like key players like Iran and China and them.
Yeah, true. I I've been spending some time with some Maoists and doing some readings with them, and some of them have a differing opinion. Not to steer this train too far off topic, but one take I was hearing was that, blaming Israeli society as a whole was not a, it's not a material analysis and all that stuff. And to like some part I agree, but again, like anybody who brings up the critique of, or like the solution for this being a two-state solution, it's, or I think have arguably lost the plot. Because if Israel and like, it's easy, it's, yes, it's easy to say that, like, if Israel, the UK, and the US didn't start this shit back in, the 40s or 100 years ago, the Zionist movement didn't start their bullshitting and like actually um turn it into arguably a successful political movement that got them what they wanted, they're um then like it wouldn't be like it wouldn't be the Palestinians um uh then like living side by side with the Palestinians wouldn't be a big deal. But I mean, they already had for hundreds of years prior. But honestly, a two-state solution to me is kind of like the slap in the face, honestly, of like every Palestinian, of like every human rights. Um, Everybody suffering, and being from human rights abuses and stuff. I honestly think it's like it needs to just go back to being Palestine. It doesn't need, like, Israel doesn't need to be a thing just because Christian Zionists and evangelicals and Jewish Zionists want it. You know, like it shouldn't. Yeah, it shouldn't exist. Hot take, I know. So,
But it's, yeah, no, I fully agree. But it's definitely a lack of analysis that is true, because looking at the history, like, Israel shouldn't be there. The Zionist entity shouldn't be there just because it was created. It doesn't deserve to exist. It was created off of the grounds of violence, off of the grounds of ruthless colonialism. As soon as the Zionists touched down onto the shores of Palestine,
mhm.
they immediately started creating violent organizations to try to take the land. They don't have a right to be there. I align very firmly to what the PFLP has said. The Jewish people who have been there, who haven't engaged or at least assisted in the settler colonialism and won't fight for the settler colonial project, they're allowed to stay. But the Zionists who have actively and firmly either supported it, engaged with it, furthered it, and will fight to keep it, they need to go.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I agree with that, and also like what you were saying, Drum. It is not a material analysis to blame every Israel of like being in Israel. A lot of the people just took the opportunity and went there. Not all of them,
Mhm.
as Islamic socialist said, is participating in like the genocide of Palestinians, or moving Palestinians from their land. Those were the militias and the terrorist groups that did that. But at the same time, like Israel doesn't have the right to exist, just based on the fact that it was
Mhm.
Palestinian land. And we also gotta like talk about, like, for example, like you gotta think about it like this as well. And I'm not supporting Israel in any way, but like we're not supposed to be here. Like this was a Native American land.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but there's still revolutionary potential here in the United States with the working class. It doesn't mean there isn't. And I believe there is a revolutionary potential with the Israel, with the people of Israel that are not for what is going on with Zionism or anti-Zionism, who I've seen on TV, like protesting like the genocide of Palestinians. So, I believe that it still should be Palestine, but uh the people that supported the Palestinians, the Israel's, what do they call it?
Israelis.
Israelis, yeah, like the Israelis that supported the Palestinians, they can live in Palestine, like they can stay there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that's a great, like, that's an acceptable compromise to me. It's like, yeah, like it's not going to be a Muslim majority nation, or maybe a Muslim majority nation, but it will, like, at the end, at when all things is said and done, if we got the end result that, for example, I advocate for, and I know a lot of us almost everyone here advocates for. um I'm just saying that it won't be oh shit, am I losing it? No. Sorry. um yeah, I'm saying that yeah, it's a good compromise, because they'll be able to show the world, like, yeah, we can coexist peacefully just like we have done. Like, it will be a return back to normal. And I think what people who like boo boo the idea of like returning it back to a fully, returning Palestine to Palestinians, and keeping us and instead keeping a two-state solution, is they kind of it's kind of how Israel operates, right? A great example of this was like uh, they bombed a Lebanese or Syrian embassy. Then they got their shit rocked, kind of, by some bombs that Iran sent, and then they wanted permission for to bomb them again as like a show of force. And it's like, no, the action already had a reaction. If you just act again, there's going to be a reaction to that. So it and what I so how does that tie into people who want the two-state solution? It's really just people wanting to save face, like everything they've advocated for a long time. I think they're just starting to say like, oh, maybe we bet on the wrong fucking horse. And now it's like, well, I don't want it all to disappear. Like that means all my efforts were for naught. So they got to keep something. It's like, no, they don't got to keep shit. Like
No, seriously.
you,
Yeah,
yeah.
like
Mhm.
sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like it's almost as nonsensical as trying to argue that the old Nazi regime deserved to keep at least some like aspects of its old government or some
Yes.
aspects of its old cabinet, and it's like no, they don't. The same reason, and I'm gonna say it this way: the people who argue for a two-state solution are arguing in a way the reasoning to keep certain very very harmful states or people. The same reason why we destroyed Nazi Germany was because Nazi Germany was not only a ruthless and violent system that went out of its way to attack its neighbors and its own people. It's the same thing for Israel. You don't get to keep your state when you are constantly causing regional conflicts and constantly attacking people within your own within the borders that you occupy. It's the same. It's the same thing. People who argue for a two-state solution are essentially telling everybody, "I want there to continuously be regional conflicts in the Middle East."
Facts. And for as I think what puts an even, not to put too fine a point on this, but if anybody just wants to fact check us or do their own kind of do their own research, I highly encourage you to look up the map of Greater Israel that's been kind of going around on I've seen it on X or Twitter and on social media, and it's basically exactly what we're talking about. Israel plans to, like, it's not just going to stop like once they take over Israel. They want Syria, they want Iran. They want to take over every piece of land from like here to I forget what country's
I,
borders,
I
but like
I know what it is because I wrote on it. I have an entire article on the topic on my Substack, Islamic Socialist Analysis, and this is a goal they've been trying to aim for even before they got into Palestine. When they first got into Palestine, the first thing they created was Ergun, and the map of Greater Israel is their logo with a hand holding a rifle. And they openly state that they want to take every bit of land between the from the Sinai in Egypt until they hit the border of Iran, taking including Syria, northern Saudi Arabia, and everything else in between. So
mhm.
the idea that they're not going to cause even more further regional conflicts, even if they do end this whole violent attack on Gaza, is a fairy tale. It doesn't exist.
Mhm.
The fact that they caused an issue with Iran because they bombed their embassy and then got clapped back for it, and then
Yeah.
shortly after they just recently attacked Lebanon. They attacked
Yeah.
Lebanon, and Lebanon smacked back and set all of northern Israel on fire. This is not a normal country. This is not a stable country, and this is especially not a country with any kind of rational thinking. This is a country so bloodthirsty, so insane that it can't stand the idea that it has any group that is different from them that doesn't submit to them around them.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely spot on. Um, they yeah, these are bloodthirsty people. They don't their compromise is you being 6 feet underground if you're Palestinian, or you're not, if you're not a European, if you're not of European descent, you okay, and you're not, if you're not of European descent and you're not Jewish, like born and raised, like fuck you. That's their message. It's for us and us alone. Um, and speaking of other failures, the humanitarian pier that broke off, that was $330 million down the fucking drain. Uh, I understand that they were able to recover some of it and like piece it back together, but I think we could all tell that it was it was never for its intended purpose. I think their stated purpose was, I know we were talking about this earlier, their stated purpose was to ship humanitarian aid, but the rest of the world's like, but there's like 6 or 7 other ports of entry that the aid can come through. But again, because the settlers are so, Israeli settlers are so relentless in their lack of empathy, um, that they block every chance they get to for humanitarian aid to get through the borders, and like the entire all of Gaza, all the remaining Palestinians are starved, thirsty. You know, babies are dying of malnutrition. It's a whole thing, dude.
I want to it the other thing as well is like humanitarian aid in the United States language is always hypocritical. The US never sends humanitarian aid, and it definitely, if it does, it doesn't send it alone. We've seen this with a lot of other conflicts. So when I see a pier that was erected by a country that's got a long history of bloodshed across the world, and especially a pier that has, you know, sonar and radars and machine gun turrets in every little corner of it, you know, I don't see that as a humanitarian aid pier. I see that as a weapon depot. That's a place to pull in weapons, and it wouldn't be surprising because when we were engaged with the Syria war, the Syria civil war, and we were aiding groups like the FSA and in some cases Al Nusra and Al Qaeda and the others. One of the things that happened, which was it's I also just don't like the fact that every single time our so-called humanitarian aid or our weapons caches that was being dropped in areas would somehow mistakenly get dropped in ISIS controlled territory. But there it doesn't get reported a lot. I tried to include it. The only place I could include it was my Telegram channel, Break the Narrative, where there was so-called humanitarian aid, and in the middle of the pallet of food and drinks was ammunition for AK-47s and you know the other kind of weapons that was very common in Syria. Like this is how the United States is. The United States does not simply just send humanitarian aid. It either sends humanitarian aid, certain like humanitarian aid that would make it dependent, make the country dependent upon the humanitarian aid that comes from them. It's never like seeds or farming equipment or anything that can help them be able to grow their own stuff, make them
Right.
independent. But it's also weapons, it's ammo, you know, that type of stuff as well. And that's not even touching on the fact that the pier is directly over where the oil is in Gaza.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't talk anything about this because I have no clue what the fuck this is. I have not watched the news about this. I had no clue this was a thing. So I don't even know. I don't even know how it broke off and put it away. Like
I
It
mean,
was apparent.
I just chalk that up to God. You know, when you're clearly not welcome there, that even your own Marines that are secretly fighting in Gaza are somehow going missing, and then suddenly, you know, the pier that's there just breaks off into the ocean. That I'm just chalking that up to God telling you get out.
Yeah, my understanding was that the reason it broke off was because it was like storm season for that region, that part of the world, and I guess like the swells and the like they got one really bad storm and it just tore it apart. But my question is like, even if that were the case, like couldn't you build a better, like more storm proof kind of, or
Yeah,
like shouldn't your intel be able to tell you that like maybe now is not the right time to like, is not the right time to spend $300 million on a fucking pier in the middle of storm season in a region of the globe over like which you're trying to get aid and shit to.
yeah,
It's like, no, you got to tell them to open the fucking ports of entry.
yeah.
Like that's way easier.
I mean, if it's $300 million, like as you said, couldn't they like make it so like it wouldn't have broke off?
Yeah,
Like,
no, it's embarrassing, dude. Like I
It
was
is
like,
embarrassing. It's stupid.
it I think it's more like, I don't know what's more embarrassing, the fact that it broke off or the fact that they now had to like they were able to like catch it. I think they were able to catch it like further up the bank at like some of the other ports, and they were able to like tug it back. But yeah, man, I don't know. So yeah. And speaking of another failure, uh the IOF killed um sorry, excuse me.
247 people and only saved 4 hostages. Um, so do you know how many Palestinians were among the 247 people?
Um I think with the exception of 41 of those killed being other hostages, I believe. Um, so 206 of them were Palestinian. But I was just reading an Al Jazeera report about it saying that it was 226 Palestinians were killed during the raid. Um, and mind you, the only way they were able to do this, which is in and of itself a war crime, they disguised themselves as humanitarian aid truck drivers. They drove the trucks in with like special operations forces. Like it was multiple Israeli and U.S. troops that helped us along, and they infiltrated a refugee camp through those humanitarian aid trucks. And it's like, there's if this is the best that you can do, then
I,
like I can find like 50 rednecks that will like take like all I got to do is get 50 rednecks from Florida, Alabama, like all of the Southeast, and just like we will fucking hammer your ass. Like I have zero faith that the IOF would be able to like mow us down. It's like, you know, without your air support and without your fucking little drones, you guys are nothing. Like it's embarrassing. Like I often watch I follow this guy called Greg J. Stoker, who's former military, and he constantly critiques and brings up like videos of like, the IOF and how they run their operations, and he just excoriates these people for their poor discipline. Like whoever like the current generation of like IOF soldiers is not the fearsome brood that once was in like the 70s and 80s. No, it's Lord, it's embarrassing,
So,
and I
so,
guess that's a good thing.
so they only saved 4 hostages.
yeah.
For
But
yeah,
I want to add, I really want to pipe up on this. This is the thing. What you were just talking
yeah,
about how they like disguise themselves as aid trucks. I want everybody to acknowledge this. They disguise themselves as aid trucks going into an area of people who have been starving for months and desperately in need of help. I'm gonna be honest. I think a lot of the reason, I think one of the big reasons why they killed so many Palestinians is because they were probably shooting Palestinians when Palestinians were running after the truck trying to like request assistance.
Oh, I don't doubt it. The specifics of it, or let me see if I can bring up the
How many hostages does I don't know, like Hamas or whatever have left?
I don't remember. I think it's like 120.
120. There's probably like 4 of them I'm gonna like survive if like the
They keep up this.
like fucking the KD fucking like they didn't do like the weapons course where like a hostage appears and you don't shoot it and you shoot the actual like person that you want to shoot, like fucking they just shoot the hostage. They don't give a fuck.
I also get really tired. I get in fights with Zionists on TikTok where they try to say, "Oh, the people when we rescued them, they're all battered," and I'm like, "No, they're not. They look like they look like they did when they first like got taken. They are still fed. They're still decently cared for. Meanwhile, anyone who is Palestinian and IOF detention right now is like starving or badly brutalized." Got cuts and wounds and shit on them.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, I'm just looking up the CNN report, and it's showing that 274 Palestinians were killed in the operation, hundreds injured, obviously, and they don't distinguish between civilian and military casualties. It's because honestly, there's not like at this point, Israel itself has said like we don't distinguish between civilian and military targets. They consider every civilian living in Palestine as an enemy combatant.
Yep,
and
they're
acting like it.
Yep, I know.
I mean, it's taken them 8 months to like. Well, it's taken the rest of the world 8 months to finally like catch on to how they were doing things, but like those in the know, like we knew what shit was, from day one. Like, and I'm not talking about October 7th, day one. I'm talking about back in the 40s and the 50s. These people knew that, and even before then, these people absolutely knew that in order to successfully execute this project and to get the success that they want out of it, they are going to need to displace, kill, maim, any way, shape, or form, countless Palestinian people. It's baked into the recipe, and anyone who says otherwise is lying to themselves and lying to you. It's inexcusable. It's unforgivable.
I've been following this whole like situation with Palestine and Israel, like the whole realities of living under Zionism ever since what has it been 2008. And I personally think like every little new thing I learned about what the Zionist entity has done to Palestine has been some of the most horrific. It's almost like a nightmare, like some of the most horrific, evil, fascistic kind of things I've ever seen in my life. And then there's still people out here fence sitting, trying to argue that either both sides have their bad or Israel is I'm so tired of hearing this argument. Israel has the most moral army, and the other insanity that comes out of either liberal Zionists or centrists and the like. There is nothing like either you see the actual history and you just fully ignore it because you're benefiting in some way or you can't accept it, or you don't know it and you are just going off of whatever the hell the mainstream media has been telling you.
Yes, 100%. At this point, hearing the phrase Israel is the most moral army in the world is akin to me, it's akin to hearing the phrase saying that cops are there to protect and serve.
It's like Personally, it sets me in a rage. I'm sorry, but if I hear somebody say that at a protest, I'm getting in your fucking face.
Yeah, yeah. You cannot excuse, like, at this point it's beyond an, I wouldn't even, to say it's an excuse means that like you're at least somewhat knowledgeable.
Yeah.
You're somewhat knowledgeable about like what's going on, and you're just like it's apology, right? It's Israeli apologism, and honestly, it doesn't belong anywhere. It doesn't belong anywhere. It's just complete bunk. But yeah, it is calling Israel the most moral army in the world is PR bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. In the same way that protect and serve is PR bullshit for police, because even the Supreme Court ruled that police under in no shape, in no way, shape, or form do they owe you protection. Like, if you're getting, and uh it came from a case in New York of a man getting stabbed, um or there was news that there was someone going around stabbing people, and it just so happened that one day this assailant came on the subway, and he just started fucking going after people, and one what you call it there was NYPD officers on the train, and when the guy started stabbing, they went to go hide in the uh in the controller's car. um they closed the door behind them, and one of the passengers actually, like, he was like super brave, and he got up in the guy's shit and took him out. um but not before suffering like terrible lacerations to his face and body. Like, he got like a flap of skin hanging off like one side. It was really rough stuff. But um they went to go they took him to the hospital. He survived his wounds, and then the NYPD came through, and they were like, yeah, we did everything we could, and they gave themselves the credit for bringing the guy in. So he sues them for he's like, you guys didn't do shit. I did all the work. You guys are just the ones who took him in. And he sued them for not doing more to protect the other citizens, and like stepping in to actually stop the threat. And it's because of that case that the U.S. Supreme Court, it was during that case that the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that police have no obligation to protect you.
You know,
So
it's actually crazy too about that case that you're talking about. Like, I I I can tell anybody that, and they'll either understand it or they'll outright refuse it. But I think the only people who go out of their way to just completely and blatantly ignore it is the liberals. Every single time I brought
oh
this
yeah,
up with any kind of liberal, like, it doesn't matter if they're a diehard partisan of the Democrats,
right.
or even some of these social democrats like Bernie. I don't think I've ever seen any other group who is quicker and more like erratic whenever I mention it to just blatantly refuse it than the liberal circles.
Yeah, I compare liberals to um I compare liberals nowadays to they're just Republicans. Um they're they're Republicans from like 20 years ago. Like, they're just way their policies are old as fuck. They're just nicer to um different identity groups. Um, but as we've seen with this Israeli genocide, or the Palestinian genocide, I should say, they've really kind of thrown that out the window. The whole like believe women and um, believe women and believe like black and brown people when they tell you shit's fucked up. It's like, oh, okay, so it's only we can they only you guys only believe us when it, we're in line with US hegemony, and like we're actually supporting the cause. But if we're actively if we're actively against one of its allies, then like suddenly our words don't mean anything.
The
Interesting. That's the reaction.
the liberals have always been a problem. Lenin talks about this in his time, like the he calls them the bourgeois liberals or the monarchist liberals. They are for the bourgeois democracy that is instilled like here in the United States, and they're there to protect that type of bourgeois democracy, and keep the workers in a dictatorship. So it's always they always been a problem.
I just recently uploaded a article on my Substack where I talked about Men's Mental Health Month, and there's a section in there where I talk about the manufactured divide that is being waged to essentially the gender war, the trying to divide the sexes along specific lines. One of the groups that I talked about was the liberals, and there's a part of what I said that's going to coincide not only just to that, but basically everything. And it doesn't matter what group they're talking to, what type of topic they're covering. Liberals don't argue for anything genuinely. They argue on topics 90% of the time either to uphold the status quo, to instill some kind of sense of self-righteousness or elitism that they have for themselves, that like they're a savior for specific groups, that other groups can't solve their issues on their own. Or one of the other big and the most common and the most annoying issues is that it goes in line with the sectarianism. Either you believe them or you're in the complete wrong, and you're written off as one of the extremes that they oppose and that they hate and that they talk about way too often. While there is definitely extremes in specific communities, you can't generalize every single criticism as, oh, they're this, they're that. You can't fight generalizations with generalizations. That's just how it is. It doesn't matter on what the topic is, but the liberals don't care about that. The liberals, and you can see it in every time they infiltrate a specific movement, event, whatever's going on, they specifically come in there as this self-righteous savior, that they have all the answers, and that if you don't agree with them, then you are causing problems with the movement, and then they just completely co-opt and take everything for themselves. They do it every single time. Doesn't matter if it's a Marxist-led event on women's issues. It doesn't matter if it's talking about racism or if it's talking about imperialism or workers' rights. They take and take, and they steal and steal, and they blunt the edge of any revolutionary rhetoric or solutions to specifically uphold the status quo and bring the movement back down to reformism.
Yeah, it's whenever we talk out against like civility politics, those examples that Islamic socialists just shared are the like key examples in the movements. A civility politics will get you absolutely nowhere. If these people had any conscience, if they had any empathy for anybody in the world, as they claim they do, they would be on the side of the Palestinians and advocating for Palestinian liberation and the dismantling of the Israeli state. But that's not what's happening. They're kind of like in the same way that they're kind of like telling that they would have told MLK to like, oh no, wait, we can't do it right now. We gotta wait for some certain attitudes to boil over and to kind of just move on to the ether. But that's not at all how stuff works. I remember when I was younger, like in high school, people would constantly and even to this day, people would constantly say like, oh, well, that's just the older generation, it's going to die out with them. In this case, like with at that time, it was like maybe your grandparents or great grandparents, and now it's like the boomers. And it's like, listen, you do not kill this idea, you do not kill these ideas, you cannot kill ideas. These people do not live in a bubble. I mean, they do now, but these people have had time to talk their shit and spread their message to other people, other generations, anybody who would listen, and infect their minds with, this death cult of that is capitalism and laissez-faire economics and all that shit. So it's not going to die out. How do you keep an idea going? You have to reward people who act the same way that you do. It's like if you're a ruthless, business-minded person who cares only about profit and nothing about quality or any of that shit, and you want to raise a protege to help keep that system alive, what are you going to do? You're not going to pick the empathetic, the tree hugger, to borrow a phrase. You're gonna you're gonna you're gonna be taking a note out of. You're gonna be looking for someone that reflects you and your values, and that's that's how they bring them up. So it doesn't just die out. It has to be snuffed out.
No, I agree. I want to mention that there is two types of liberals I am seeing. There's two types of liberals we are seeing in, especially in this current situation with the Palestinian movement. There is those who are upholding the status quo and arguing in favor of Israel. Though there is those. There's the pro-Zionist will probably always be Zionist, and then there's the normalizers. There is, and they come in a few different versions, but there's the normalizers. We see them like they did in the civil rights movement back in the day. They're coming into the movement, they're trying to co-opt the movement, they're trying to focus purely on reformism, getting the people to calm down the radical and revolutionary language, and starting to try to get the United States government to obey what they're saying so that they can get Israel to stop. There's those kinds of normalizers. The other kind of people that we're seeing is the liberals. That is probably the most infuriating. The people who are out here trying to argue in favor of Biden, saying that if Trump gets in office, he'll be 1,000 times worse on Gaza, despite Biden is the one that's actively committing the genocide. That this is the other version of what I would refer to as a normalizer. These kinds of liberals who say they're on the side of the Palestinians and then are actively constantly trying to get people to return to reformism, trying to get them to say that the Democrats are truly on their side, even if the past 8 months clearly shows otherwise.
Yeah, and their other defense for it too is it's either lesser evilism, which I don't buy anymore and haven't for a while, but harm reduction, that somehow voting for Biden is going to result in less harm to people. But it's very, it's very clear. It's very clear that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, it is what both of you have said. Like, the liberals are the status quo of keeping everything normalized, and keeping the current government in place as long as it adheres to the liberal doctrine. So, they're there to keep this government from ever being going into the dictatorship of the proletariat. More so the democracy of the workers, and just totally ruining that. And again, like, having a strong fast hold on this government and not going to the next stage, which is socialism.
I'm gonna be back.
All right,
I gotta do prayer. It's getting close.
I just do it in my.
I know.
All right.
Yeah, so we just wish, again, we wish the best for the Palestinian people, and we just, if you can donate, donate. If you can't donate, spread awareness. There's links all over the place that you can share on your social media. Boost it as much as you can to help get money and to those people.
And
They
if you want to get your hands dirty, contact me.
This also goes double for like Sudan and the Congo, who are also undergoing uh, just, I mean, undue and very cruel, um, very cruel oversight by their respective governments and internal forces, um, and as a result of colonialism. And shout out to the new leader of Burkina Faso. Um, they've been trying hard to take him down, but he's still kicking. So he's a young dude, and he's trying to lead his country to victory, to liberation. Moving on. In other news, Russia docks submarines in Cuban ports for military exercise. U.S. responds by docking their super secret sub at Cuban ports. And when I mean super secret sub, apparently, like, they don't tell anybody that this sub exists. Like, this is kind of like the in their black book or their black ledger for funds and stuff. They it just yeah, it's out there.
I mean, it's not surprising that it's not surprising what Russia did. I mean, if you look at the geopolitics of it, you see that the United States has approved U.S. weapons to be used in Ukraine. They're showing force, letting the United States to know that not to keep going with this because there will be consequences. And I know that from what I heard, or this may not be true, but the submarine didn't have it's like nuclear, like it has the nuclear capabilities, but it did not have like a nuclear weapon inside of it. And I'm guessing that's because they didn't want to take it to ultimate level where I think the United States would have had to respond with nuclear force. So they're trying to let them know, like, look, we're gonna do this just to show you that we're serious about this. And the next step is gonna be an all-out war.
Yeah. No, and it's kind of funny, it's a little bit of a repeat of the Cuban Missile Crisis, I think some would say, but at the same time, like, uh, not that the U.S. has ever respected another country's sovereignty, but it's like, hey, look, the Cubans are free to, even if you don't like Putin, if you don't like the Russian government, the Cuban government is free to fraternize with whomever um, they deem eligible to fraternize with, um, just because we're 90 miles from their country we get to doesn't mean we get to control every aspect of their political lives and affiliations. But that's kind of been the default stance of the U.S. to with regards to all South American and Caribbean countries, and all other countries for that matter. Like anywhere that we have a base, yeah.
The thing about, like, supporting Putin and why like tankies like may support Putin is basically because they allow communists to actually participate even in their electoral process, uh, electoral judicial.
I think it would be electoral.
Electoral, like, they have a bunch of communist parties, not only that, it's still like is allied with Cuba, allied with DPRK, allied with China, all these central figures of the communist movement. Um, there might be a lot of communists that don't agree with this because they say China is not socialist or things of that nature. But the truth of the matter is China's getting things done. They're getting towards. They even said a date when they're going to get towards socialism. They're getting their productive forces ready in order to transition to socialism, and at the same time they lowered well, not lowered, but the study was basically that there were a lot of people in China that were well off compared to the United States. But anyways, getting back to the point, like Putin like supports all these countries where I forgot what was the guy who came in after the Soviet Union collapse, the liberal motherfucker, Yeltsin.
Yeltsin, yeah.
Yeah, like that motherfucker didn't support shit. Like, he was a reactionary all the way through, and here we go again, liberal.
Yeah. Yeah. They only support their party, their the people who support them kind of deal. Like if you don't believe in their politics, and if they're but more importantly, if they're not the ones in control, if they're not the ones pulling the levers, then to them they don't see it as worth collaborating on. A perfect example is back in of this kind of thinking is back in 20, I think it was 2020, an office in Arizona belonging to the Democrat majority, excuse me, was hold on.
But yeah, it's kind of productive to say like I support Russia for what it did. I support for what it did. It's trying to intend to show force. But at the same time, it would be like hypocritical for me living in Florida and Russia, fucking Florida with nuclear weapons, to be all like, oh yeah, like no, like, but it's like it's a two-way street, like it's the fact that Russia is trying to send a message to the United States and trying to send a message to the imperialist Western powers that it will not be fucked with.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's not the only superpower out here, and you know, and it's time they recognize it. But back to my example, back in 2020, there was like I think the DSA was partnering with the Democrats, and all the DSA candidates won their like special elections, and it was a landslide. Every single one of them won all their seats in Arizona, and the Democratic Party operatives were like, before the elections results came in, they were like, oh yeah, if we're willing to work with you guys if maybe if you don't win all your seats, but we're willing to work with you guys and like capitulate and all that stuff. And as soon as they heard news that all the DSA candidates, all the DSA supported candidates won their elections, they picked up their shit and left, because they knew that they were no longer that they were not going to be the ones in power. They were not going to be the ones calling the shots party wide or otherwise. They didn't have that control. That's not to like heap too much praise on DSA. There, it's right now it's not my bag, but that's just kind of show you the kind of mindset these liberals operate under. Yeah. So that being said, our last topic, we're gonna cover Hunter Biden receiving a guilty verdict for felony gun charges.
Was he a felon or something?
He was not a felon before. He's a felon now. He is.
So sorry, I never like got into the whole Hunter Biden thing because I don't give a fuck about Hunter Biden. I don't give a fuck about Biden in general, But even with Trump, like I don't even keep up with this shit like most of the time. What like why did he get found in gun charges?
Um. So he was carrying a firearm, and I think he dispersed like one shot in a neighborhood near a school, and then he uh disposed of the firearm in like a garbage can near the school.
That's
And
fucking
obviously
that's fucking stupid. Why the fuck did he do that?
it was so dumb, bro. And then like the FBI tried to like try to come, FBI or the CIA tried to like come up behind them, and we're like, no, we're taking this as evidence, blah blah blah. And it's like, you're just gonna like make it go away, you know like
It
you,
wasn't
you got,
it wasn't even like him between someone like talking back and forth like fighting and shit. Like he just did it like
no no
randomly.
yeah. It happened a while ago. I think it happened in like 2017, 2018. So it was a while ago. um so I was kind of like um wondering where that was going. But long story short, yeah, the jury ended up coming down and giving him a guilty verdict. um and Biden said he would not pardon him um for his charges and his crimes. And
He just
everyone's like, oh my god. Huh?
he's just saving face.
I think so. Yeah, because everyone's like, "Oh my God, like." All I heard during the case, like I was reading this, I think it was the R News on subreddit, and everyone's like, "Oh, imagine like losing your losing your wife, your and a daughter, um, in a car crash, and then like losing one son to cancer, and then this one he's a felon." But it's like these are rich, entitled people. They do they don't they do not give a fuck about you guys. I don't know why you're all like, I know like optics wise, people are like super concerned about that shit, but it's like Joe Biden wouldn't even remember you. He does not give a single flying fuck about you and your family. And it's clear like in his um how he's running the country, because he's not running the country. It's his cabinet and everybody else around him that's running it. um this guy, he doesn't listen to reason. He's just like you're saying, he's saving face, and he's doing everything Trump would do. But the fact that he's a Democrat, it's suddenly getting no play on the news stations. Like, he's enacting Trump era immigration policy, um and which is to like close down the border. And everyone's like, "Oh, this would happen under Trump." It's like, no, it's happening under Joe Biden right now. He's doing it. He's the one who's got his his hands on the lever. He's the one pulling the lever. So to to characterize it as though this is a potential risk of having Trump elected and everything, as is with every argument that's everybody arguing in favor of Biden. It's like, if you believe that Trump is as dangerous, if I am to believe Trump is as dangerous as you think he is, then why not put up a better candidate? Like, answer me that. But because Joe Biden cannot be, and I'm sure as shit no, uh he's not the only legitimate and available candidate. There are other people who are more willing, more able, and are they still libs? Are they still Democrats? Yes, but they're still way more capable of doing the job, of carrying out the job and responsibilities of president than Joe Biden. There's no arguing that. We're just fighting over which grandpa gets to stay out of the retirement home at this point. It's so fucking embarrassing. So
Remember when people criticized Bernie for being old, and they put Hillary Clinton instead? I mean, the most neoliberal person. Like,
yeah. I remember all the critiques and all the critiques the liberals had for Bernie suddenly went out the door for Biden. Oh, he's old, he's a white man, he doesn't, you're like, this man was friends with and read the eulogy for a segregationist. He was against busing. He was against integrated busing um for white and black children. Like, the only reason Obama got elected was because they picked Joe Biden to run with Barack Obama, because they're like, we need someone on the ballot who's going to appeal to conservatives. And then you're telling me that this person is now going to run as the quote unquote progressive candidate in US politics? Get the fuck out of here. Like, every legitimate critique, or every critique that these liberals and these rad libs were throwing at Bernie can be applied tenfold, 1,000-fold to Joe Biden. He's not a progressive in any way, shape, or form. Even his take on abortion, which was that, he's like, I'm Catholic, but I think everyone has a right to bodily autonomy and stuff. It's like, okay, it's good that you believe that. That's a decent take to have. But if you don't mobilize your supporters and you don't mobilize your party to block legislation, or to codify Roe v. Wade and stop it from being overturned, of what use are these values if they're not etched in stone, really? And
like, talk about progressives. Lenin he wrote about Roosevelt, and he was basically saying even progressives, like, they're just reformists of capitalism. They still want capitalism, but they're just trying to reform it their way. Biden would be the opposite of that. Biden is pro-capitalism, doesn't care about reformism. He may, say, like, I'm gonna cancel like student debt and stuff like that, and that didn't go through. And then people say, oh, he canceled student debt, but it didn't really go through. So, like, it's one of his accomplishments that it didn't really make it. So he has no accomplishment at all. What you were saying, that that he's being run by his cabinet, reminds me of George Bush and Dick Cheney, where Dick Cheney was basically telling George Bush what to do throughout his career. So it's funny.
Yeah, no, they wheel him out in the early hours, or in the early afternoons, and they feed him ice cream. They have him put on sunglasses and or some aviators, and they say, like, hey, yeah, here's Uncle Joe. Everybody loves Uncle Joe. Isn't he so nice? Isn't he isn't he something, like, everybody can mourn with him? Like, he's like, apparently people take and I'm not saying this because I'm like some sort of a misanthropist or anything, but, like, people are so obsessed with him, like, being able to mourn and being like, like, yes, losing your children and losing your wife these are horrible things. I don't wish that no parent should have to bury their child. That being said, these are not just that alone. That's not a quality for having to run for president or being president. It's like, just because you you can mourn the loss of a loved one, while it does inspire or denote that one is capable of empathy. Like, I don't care about what's going on in your personal life. I want to know what your policies are and how you intend to enact them. What actions are you going to take to make the lives of others and those you represent better? And if you can't answer that, I don't care what trouble befalls you. I don't care what color your skin is. I don't care what religion you are. I don't care shit all what you believe. If your policies don't match, don't do anything to help the working class, of what use are you to me? You're none. So
yeah, we need to, like, again, I know I'm mentioning Lenin a lot, but Lenin also said, like, we should actively, like, participate in the electoral process, not necessarily to win, but to bring working class issues to light. And I think, like, Bernie has been criticized a lot, but, like, not even criticized him, but, like, he actually did that. He actually, even though he didn't win, he brought all these issues, working class issues, to the forefront, which many Americans
yeah.
approved of. So it is what it is.
Oh yeah, he was exactly, like, he was absolutely able to highlight the shortcomings of the past administrations and what's needed for sure. Now, and he definitely moved the Overton window to the left. Just he was able to tug on it slightly. Now the difference is now we need another candidate who's like, we need a fully communist candidate, honestly. Just to be like, and we need to keep running the fully communist candidate until, like, people start catching wise that, like, oh, maybe these Democrats, these progressives aren't as good for us as we thought, because here these communists are talking about nationalization and free food and childcare for everybody, and all this other stuff. And the Democrats won't even put a rent freeze to help you out during a pandemic. Like, people don't forget that shit. People don't forget.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah. But anyway, I think that wraps it up for us. That's a good note to end on for this week. So thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll catch you on the next one. As always, free Palestine. I'm Drem.
Marxist hoodlum, also known as Azriel, and that Islamic socialist is probably taking a shit right now. That's why he's not here. And that's our show.
Yeah, you've been listening to Mob Boss Bolshevism. We'll see you next time.